it's not just the right of the person who speaks to be heard. It is the right of everyone in the audience to listen and to hear. And every time you silence somebody, you make yourself a prisoner of your own action because you deny yourself the right to hear something. In other words, your own right to hear and be exposed is as much involved in all these cases as is the right of the other to voice his or her view. Indeed, as John Stuart Mill said, if all in society were agreed on the truth and beauty and value of one proposition, all except one person, it would be most important. In fact, it would become even more important that that one heretic be heard, because we would still benefit from his perhaps outrageous or appalling view. In more modern times, this has been put, I think, best by a personal heroine of mine, Rosa Luxemburg, who said that the freedom of speech is meaningless unless it means the freedom of the person who thinks differently.
I would be very nervous about any form of regulation of these companies.
So just let everybody say whatever they think?
Well, I do believe that.
So just let everybody say whatever they think?
When doing research for the Dissecting a Degenerate Sarah Jeong video that came out last weekend, I stumbled upon some clips of her talking about internet security.
Like, I think I have some compelling arguments as to why ad blockers are a good thing, but it makes me nervous to stand here and make that statement in a place where editors I work with are going to find out I said this. For the most part, ads aren't inert images. They interact with your browser in a much more active way, oftentimes putting tracking cookies on your machine. Cookies will betray where you've been, what you've looked at. Advertisers are using cookies to identify you, your location, your interests. Targeted advertising online is intrinsically a matter of surveillance, and where there is surveillance, power imbalances will be exploited in unethical ways. How do you define spam, right? You're gonna call it an unwanted mailing, but that could be anything. And if you say harassment is an unwanted contact, like, that could be anything as well. Like, those are both overbroad definitions.
Are there any helpful legal definitions of harassment?
Yeah, the answer is no. Like, the first sort of error that people make is like, oh, let's solve harassment. There's no such thing as solving harassment. It's about providing solutions, but that just means making it a little better, a little better, a little better, a little better. And I mean, that's the case with like a lot of stuff, right? Like with, for instance, personal security, you're not gonna solve hacking forever. Like there is no such thing, unless everyone throws away their computers and then we'll be done. And actually that would solve online harassment too. So maybe we should think about it. What I think is particularly interesting in the Twitter context is that there's like, the on and off button essentially, right? Block or not block. And for the longest time in our sort of dealings with each other on the internet, as we form these communities, we haven't had such a limited way to deal with each other. Like, usually we have like a moderator, we have someone who's like sorting out discussions or like banning people from the group or like saying, hey guys, like, you need to be more civil to each other, or like removing certain posts, right?
Sarah Jeong has made an entire career around equating online harassment with email spam. She's given multiple talks on the subject, and written a book titled The Internet of Garbage, which, to be honest, probably belongs in the garbage. But here's her basic thesis. Spam and harassment are both loosely defined terms that are extremely subjective. Spam and harassment are both things people don't want to see on the internet. If we use automated measures to block spam, why can't we use automated measures to block harassment? And while she spends a little bit of time in these talks lamenting big tech's control of the up-and-coming automated anti-harassment industry, she does so from the point of view that social media companies are not acting completely in line with her value system of social justice, and largely glosses over any and all free speech concerns as irrelevant. As seen here.
Free speech good, oppressive government's bad. We must protect the internet from these threats of interference, of censorship. And suddenly the discourse was changing. And we were increasingly seeing these examples of women getting basically threatened off the internet. So these are people working in the tech industry who are really, really like, nothing should be censored on the internet. And when it came to spam, however, they were just like, burn it with fire. rain nuclear bombs on spammers. This is the worst thing that has ever happened to the internet. And how dare you tell me that spam filters might be bad? In the end, harassment is very subjectively defined, and spam is also subjectively defined. So I go through this history because harassment is spam. When you're looking at the constant low buzz, the targeted campaigns, these news articles about, oh, she received a flood of tweets, and then they will even say how many tweets per hour she was receiving. What you're looking at is a targeted, personal, distributed denial of service. And in fact, the common sort of advice in these situations is just turn off your phone for a while, get off the internet. It's basically social media no longer functions for you. You no longer have this avenue of communication. Your machines have been, in a way, compromised by too much information because people are screaming at you too much. You know, it's just spam speech. Spam's also garbage, and so we carry on. It's we can move forward from there. We don't have to stop at, but what about my free speech? The conversation cannot end there. Speech is important, but we have work to do anyways.
This is where Sarah Jeong ultimately goes wrong. Free speech is where the topic ends, because unlike whatever you're talking about, the freedom to not be offended or whatever, free speech is a fundamental human right. It's a natural right, and it's the wellspring from which all other rights flow. And no, I do not intend for this to be a second Sarah Jeong video. But as a really quick aside, I forgot to mention in the last video that Sarah also stood with SRH Butts, the pedophile from FF Shrine, doxed a rape victim, while simultaneously pinning a blog post lamenting the uselessness of the term doxing due to its overuse and oversaturation by abusive people, and opposed the criminalization of revenge porn back in 2013 because she didn't want to give the government that much power to regulate the internet, while in 2016, supporting the criminalization of revenge porn on social justice terms. Consider that some dessert from the previous video. But while Sarah Jeong is wrong to ignore the free speech concerns of conflating harassment, whatever she arbitrarily defines that as, with internet spam, she is right to bring up the worrying overreach of social media networks.
How would you describe the different policies at Facebook and Instagram and how they get away with that versus Twitter?
I mean, I would describe Facebook and Instagram as unapologetically censorious. I mean, Facebook institutes a real names policy, which means they're basically asking people for government ID to be able to engage on their social media platform. Like that's a really big deal.
Twitter gets criticized all the time for being an easy place to use Twitter to abuse people, women, and minorities, and so do you think that just as a result of all that criticism, they're becoming more censorious, like Facebook and Instagram?
I do think so. I think that they are trying very hard not to be. I think that internally the company identity is still, they want to believe that they are for free speech. And a lot of, I think they genuinely believe this. But it's hard, right? Like they are imposing more restrictions and they're doing it, they've been trying to be thoughtful about it. And I do think a lot of it is in reaction to growing awareness of online harassment, particularly the online harassment of women.
I've found that SJWs have a strange relationship with social media. All of the big tech names, Google, YouTube, Apple, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, whatever, they're all run by SJWs, and they're all trying to tyrannically implement social justice principles upon their user bases. Though half of the time they seem to fuck it up, and the ordinary rank-and-file SJWs are the ones that get burned instead. While this might be hilarious as all hell, generating a brand new wave of fresh memes each time, it's still morally reprehensible how much power the social media companies have over the public sphere right now. As I'm sure you already know, Facebook, Apple, and Spotify all banned Alex Jones and his InfoWars publication from their platforms, and they all did it within hours of each other. For any of you that were around during Gamergate, it felt like the Gamers Are Over shit show, where over a dozen authors and publications had collaborated behind the scenes to all push a narrative at the same time, to retaliate against gamers for exposing their corruption. What happened to Alex Jones certainly felt like a coordinated attack, and as it turns out, it was. But it didn't stop with Facebook, Apple, and Spotify. YouTube would also move to take down the InfoWars channel shortly afterward. Comedy Central, forgetting that they're a comedy platform and not a political commentary platform, would state, Now the racists only have Twitter, Reddit, YouTube, Gab, and whitehouse.gov. In the Google Play Store, the InfoWars app was on the trending list at 3rd place, but the trending list still refused to show the app, going from 1 to 2 to 4 in the display. Ethan Klein, host of the H3 podcast, would livestream a discussion of the banning of Alex Jones from the online public sphere, only to have YouTube shut down his channel mid-stream and issue him a community guidelines strike for broadcasting inappropriate content.
I don't think he really believes what he says, like about all the crazy stuff that he...
Well, that's definitely debatable.
Hey guys, let me cut in real quick. Yeah. Wow. We just got taken down by YouTube. They just killed our stream.
Really?
Yep.
Why?
Community guidelines.
Oh, we can't show his footage?
Video content restriction. Wow.
We can't even show his footage.
What?
What?
Oh.
Are you fucking
never
stupid?
I'm not.
Because it's been removed? Jesus.
Wow.
How stupid are you, YouTube? All right, we are back. We were live streaming, and right as we were getting into it, you guys saw, if you're watching the VOD, YouTube, in their infinite wisdom, removed our live stream and gave us a strike. Which basically, when you get a strike, you can't live stream anymore. So some genius over at LiveTube.
LiveTube?
I'm having a fucking... You see what it's doing to me? Shredder's freaking out. We've been sitting here for like an hour trying to figure out what to do. Some fucking genius was like, oh, they're talking about Alex Jones. Let's remove the fucking... You know what is so insane? Is that my whole rant, as I was just getting into, was very... I'm taking YouTube's side. That Alex Jones is a crazy conspiracy theorist who violated the terms of service, was doing all this shit that shouldn't, that by YouTube's terms of service shouldn't be allowed. And what the fuck does YouTube do? They're like, you know what we need to do?
They all sit around and think, what's the best thing to do right now? The most best thing.
They're like,
that will make us look so much better.
Ethan is defending us. Ethan is defending us against Alex Jones right now. Do you know what we can do in one fell swoop to legitimize Alex Jones and to piss Ethan off and turn him against us? Let's shut his channel down and give him a strike mid-live stream. It's brilliant. Let's do that. Shut it down. What the fuck? Like, how can I even sit here now and call Alex Jones a conspiracy theorist when our channel just got striked down for even fucking talking about him? Not even, I was criticizing him.
We were analyzing the situation. What is it? Who watched that and thought to himself, this needs to be taken down right now?
Disqus, a well-known comment plugin, acquiesced to a request to stop supplying the InfoWars website with a comment section on its articles, with this particularly wasteful bit of genetic material asking if One Angry Gamer also violated the Disqus terms of service. For those of you who don't know, One Angry Gamer is a gaming publication that was instrumental in uncovering corruption and unethical behavior by the SJWs in games journalism during Gamergate, which to an SJW means that he must have been a racist, sexist, fascist, whatever. Alex Jones would proceed to open an account on the streaming platform Vimeo, and would also see it shut down in just 2 days. And while for a short time, Twitter would refuse to ban Alex Jones under the pretense that he hadn't violated any of Twitter's policies, despite massive social justice outcry that Twitter ought to therefore change its policies and ban him anyway, an outcry that eventually culminated in the Will Wheaton-led D-Day protest, where a group of high-profile far-left voices on Twitter threatened to deactivate their accounts if Alex Jones wasn't banned. And spoiler alert, nobody cares, shut up Wesley. As well as Alex Jones himself naming Twitter's Jack Dorsey as an ally in his fight. Twitter would eventually suspend him. What for, you ask? Tweeting a link to one of his videos titled "Trump Must Take Action Against Web Censorship," claiming that it was targeted harassment. Let that fucking sink in for a cold minute. Twitter banned somebody because that person said that government intervention is required to prevent social media networks from censoring people. Before we keep going, I think it's important for us to take a second and talk about who Alex Jones actually is. Alex Jones is a right-wing conspiratorial nutjob. I've always considered him to be the far right's tinfoil hat. And in the early 2000s, if you ever needed an example of right-wing lunacy, Alex Jones was the guy everyone brought up, even more so than Fox News. He's bombastic, he's inflammatory, he says the most ridiculous and blatantly untrue things on his show, and while his fan base eats it up, the rest of the internet sees him as a laughingstock. And I can't believe that the world has gotten so bent that I actually have to throw my hat into the ring on the side of Alex fucking Jones on principle. Because despite all of these things, despite what he is, he does not deserve to get censored off the internet. That's what free speech is all about. Free speech rights do not exist to protect benign speech. Benign speech doesn't need protecting. We need to allow contrarian speech to exist. We need to allow controversial speech to exist. We need to allow hateful or offensive speech to exist. And yes, we even need to allow conspiratorial, insane, batshit speech to exist, because we benefit from hearing all of it. Oh, and it turns out Alex Jones isn't even that guy. He just plays a character for views. Well, good fucking job, social media barons. You just banned Redneck Borat because you couldn't get the joke. Though, let's give credit where credit is due. The reason Alex Jones got the boot from Spotify, which kicked off the chain reaction that led to his tech-fearing from the internet, is, get this, because upcoming #MeToo hopeful Jared Holt got jealous that the InfoWars podcast was on Spotify while his wasn't. No. Really? Why did you decide to target Spotify? Alex Jones is being distributed all over, as we've come to realize. I'm not sure it was really a calculated effort. I use Spotify to listen to music while I work. I noticed they had a podcast section, so I was looking through that. When I found InfoWars, I was surprised, mostly because of my own experience as someone who has a podcast, aside from my work with Right Wing Watch. I had experienced a personal struggle to get Spotify to list my own podcast. I guess I was a little bit offended that Alex Jones was able to get on air, and I wasn't. Well, we all knew that the great social media purge was bound to happen eventually. I just never considered the possibility it would be kicked off by a beta male throwing a soy fit. Though this isn't really where it kicked off, is it? 1 year ago, due to the fallout from the Charlottesville Unite the Right rally, the neo-Nazi website The Daily Stormer was unceremoniously drummed off the internet. All social media accounts removed, web hosting revoked, site taken down, and ever since then, the Daily Stormer has occasionally resurfaced on yet another new overseas hosting service for a couple of days before getting taken offline again. I mean, look at this. Look at how many attempts they've made. How many times they've resurfaced and then disappeared again. Now, I can remember pretty clearly what the outcry looked like back then. Oh, it's just neo-Nazis. Who cares if their freedom of speech is stifled? Who cares if their sites are shut down? And they're actually neo-Nazis. Not just regular people that happen to disagree with SJWs, but legit neo-Nazis. People didn't really care too much because nobody wanted to come to the defense of legit Nazis. Everyone just laughed, made their memes, and in time forgot that the Daily Stormer even existed. But it was entirely ideological, and anyone who remembers the incident knows it, including those who perpetuated it. Cloudflare CEO says his Daily Stormer takedown was arbitrary and dangerous. I woke up this morning in a bad mood and decided to kick them off the internet. Well, at least you're honest. Until recently, Cloudflare prided itself on its unwavering commitment to free speech. Even when he was criticized for providing service to alleged terrorist groups in 2013, CEO Matthew Prince stood firm, insisting that a website is speech, it's not a bomb. So a lot of people were surprised on Wednesday when the company abruptly changed its tune and canceled the account of the neo-Nazi site Daily Stormer. The action seemed to fly in the face of everything Cloudflare claimed to believe as recently as May. And in an internal company email obtained by Gizmodo, Prince acknowledged that the decision was exactly as arbitrary as it seemed. My rationale for making this decision was simple. The people behind the Daily Stormer are assholes, and I'd had enough. Let me be clear, this was an arbitrary decision. Prince wrote that he woke up this morning in a bad mood and decided to kick them off the internet. It was a decision I could make because I'm the CEO of a major internet infrastructure company. In the same email, Prince argued that it's dangerous for that kind of power to be concentrated in any one person's hands. It's important that what we did today not set a precedent, Prince added. The right answer is for us to be consistently content neutral. Well, you did set a precedent, you idiot. You opened Pandora's box, unilaterally abusing your power to remove the Daily Stormer from the internet for purely ideological reasons, and suffering no fallout from your actions, showed everyone else that this type of takedown could be done to anyone they disagreed with, too. This is why you can't give social justice an inch. They will take a mile every time. Never apologize. give them nothing. Last year, it was legit neo-Nazis. This year, it's right-wing conspiracy theorists. Will it be reasonable conservatives in 2019? Will it be political centrists in 2020? Twitter's already shut down the accounts of Gavin McInnes and his far-right group, the Proud Boys. YouTube has taken down Stefan Molyneux. And we've got this scumbucket post over on the Common Sense with Dan Carlin Facebook page. Vox also called for the banning of Steven Crowder and Candace Owens. However, it's not enough. I called for the banning of Joe Rogan, albeit with mixed results. Personally, I have my sights set on Sargon of Akkad. We've got him banned off Twitter, but he's got to go off YouTube too. This is how SJWs react when they can't win an argument. They try to remove you from anywhere and everywhere, so that the general public cannot be exposed to just how wrong they are. They will remove your freedom of expression while calling you the fascist. They were a joke 10 years ago, but now these are the people that will decide what you can think, speak, and feel. How long will we allow the SoCal tech giants and their social justice hypocrites to force their arbitrary morality upon us all, like some male feminist forcing himself on a new intern? Because it's not just a few of them, it's all of them. And it's not just recently, it's been happening since the very beginning. I'm sure everyone here is privy to Microsoft's great antitrust sins of the past. More recently, the Windows 10 auto-update debacle, where you had to basically pull your computer apart from the inside out if you wanted a Windows 10 install to stop updating itself. And if you had a Windows 7 or 8 install and you didn't disable Windows Update, forget it, you would soon find yourself the owner of a brand new Windows 10 PC, even if you closed out of the install process. The close button on the install window would install the update anyway. But even today, it seems like Microsoft still wants to control absolutely everything their users do on their platform, and this extends into the next iteration of Windows. It's only just a rumor at this point, but the next version of Windows, currently named Windows Polaris, won't actually be sold the way that Windows 10 is right now, where you can buy a disk of Windows 10 or you can buy a PC with a copy of it installed and you own a copy of Windows 10. But Windows Polaris will be considered a service, not a purchase, much like Steam or Xbox Live, where you won't actually own a copy of the OS running on your PC. And not only will you have no way to disable its updates, you'll have no legal standing to do so. This is kind of like the right to repair controversy currently going on with smartphones, where companies like Apple are claiming in court that people don't have the right to bring their iPhones to third-party repair shops, because Apple still technically owns the physical iPhone, and the customer only bought the service of using Apple's property as Apple sees fit, making third-party repairs, hacks, modifications, and self-repairs or self-upgrades all illegal. But insofar as Windows Polaris is concerned, this is just a rumor. What's not a rumor is Microsoft's newest service agreement. This agreement covers the use of all Microsoft products, ranging from Skype to Xbox, Windows 10 to Bing, Microsoft Office and Internet Explorer and Hotmail alike. Let's take a look in here. Code of conduct. By agreeing to these terms, you're agreeing that when using the services, you will follow these rules. 1. Don't do anything illegal. A reasonable request, though this sort of thing always leads you down the philosophical hole of what if your tyrannical government has made morally neutral behavior illegal, but that's a different topic. 2. Don't engage in any activity that exploits, harms, or threatens to harm children. Fine. 3. Don't send spam. Spam is unwanted or unsolicited bulk email, postings, contact requests, text messages, or instant messages. Hello, Sarah Jong. 4. Don't publicly display or use the services to share inappropriate content or material, involving, for example, nudity, bestiality, pornography, offensive language, graphic violence, or criminal activity. Now here's where we have a massive problem. Keep in mind this applies to all Microsoft services. So if you get porn in your email account, that's against the terms of service. If you write some kind of dime store smut in Microsoft Word, against the terms of service. Make an offensive joke with your pals in a Skype call, against terms of service. And just in case I'm starting to sound like just as much of a conspiracy theorist as Alex Jones himself, check this out. If you've got a copy of Word installed, you can pause the video and go confirm this for yourself. If you've got the latest updates, these selections will probably be automatically checked off. Alongside the spell checker and the grammar checker, there's the inclusive language checker, in which Word will scan for gender-specific language and racial bias. When these options are running, and on every new install of the latest MS Office they're running by default, your Word file will look like this. Consider using gender-neutral language. Please change countrymen to compatriots. How long until we get a blue-haired, genderqueer paperclip of color popping up on the screen telling us our homework is racist? But for the most part, and unlike the upcoming entries in this video, Microsoft's actually pretty okay. They state in their terms of service that they have no intention of actively monitoring all of the service, and they don't even have the capacity to do so. Let's hope that doesn't change. One thing to say about Twitter right off is that whenever I save links for a future video and I'm too lazy to archive them, if they're Twitter links, half the time the tweet's either been deleted or the account's been suspended. Twitter loves its routine purges, and in fact, one happened right while I was writing this script. This latest purge used stored phone numbers to ban accounts. If you've previously been banned, and that banned account was attached to your phone, and you then used that phone number on a new Twitter account, Twitter now makes that connection and will ban you based on that phone number. Of course, if you were to give up that number and somebody else were to get it down the line, and they wanted to use Twitter, that would probably fuck them over, but hey, I guess Jack doesn't think that far ahead. Also, this is another step closer to requiring a phone number to use the service at all, much like how Facebook requires a real name. I guess the minute that WikiLeaks revealed it was not only the political right, but also the left that was corrupt, people like Jack decided that whistleblowers just didn't need that much protection. On July 26th, President Trump tweeted, "Twitter shadow banning prominent Republicans. Not good. We will look into this discriminatory and illegal practice at once. Many complaints." Though shadow banning is a common practice on many social media networks, including Twitter despite what Twitter says in the subject, this was the first time that somebody with as high a profile as Trump has talked about it. BuzzFeed wrote an article about the possibility that Twitter was shadow banning Republicans, and as everyone expected, they determined it wasn't happening. What is shadow banning? Shadow banning is the long-standing practice of making a user's content appear only to the user who posted it, making them think they're visible on a network though they're invisible to others. Is Twitter shadow banning prominent Republicans? No. Twitter is not shadow banning prominent Republicans. No users' tweets, Republicans or Democrats, have been hidden. Instead, what's happening is that certain users' handles are not auto-populating in Twitter's search feature when you begin to type their names. Well, they're not shadow banning, they're just doing some of the things people know to be shadow banning under a different name. That's like saying I'm not playing a video game, I'm just sitting on my couch, pushing buttons on a controller, and watching things happen on screen due to my inputs. Okay, so how did we get here? The reason certain users' names stopped auto-populating in Twitter search is due to a new initiative, the rollout started in May, that's geared towards driving healthy conversation on the platform. Healthy conversation, hate speech, harassment, even Nazis at this point. These are all weasel words used by SJWs to mean anything and everybody I don't like. A social media platform with a commitment to free speech would not curate for, quote, healthy conversation. It would not ban hate speech or even harassment, frankly. It would allow those ideas to be presented and publicly mocked by the greater user base as ridiculous. Bad ideas are like seeds. They don't die when you drive them underground. They grow. Twitter has not specified exactly all the signals it's considering, but many are designed at trying to spot unhealthy or trolling behavior. One metric Twitter uses, for example, is to look for accounts that repeatedly tweet and mention accounts that don't follow them. Oh, so forget about being social on a social media platform. Don't burst the ideological bubble. That's just not allowed anymore. Remember when this image was floating around of the extremely limited left-right interaction on Twitter? Well, it seems like this type of political divisiveness is Twitter's end goal after all. And despite Twitter's insistence that it is entirely apolitical and bipartisan, a member of Twitter's own legal team admitted to hiding tweets with the DNC leak and Podesta emails hashtags. In prepared testimony before the Senate Subcommittee on Crime and Terrorism delivered on October 31st, Twitter's acting general counsel, Sean J. Edgett, acknowledged this large-scale effort to hide political information by noting, "Before the election, we took action on activity relating to hashtags that have since been reported as manifestations of efforts to interfere with the 2016 election." With respect to DNC leak, approximately 23,000 users posted around 140,000 unique tweets with that hashtag in the relevant period. Of those tweets, roughly 2% were from Russian-linked accounts. As noted above, our automated systems at the time detected, labeled, and hid just under half, 48%, of all the original tweets with hashtag DNC leak. So they knew it wasn't all Russian bots. They knew a large majority of these tweets were legitimate, and they covered it up anyway. Not only did they cover it up, Twitter and their verified journo friends in the media spun a narrative of Russian collusion on social media being the only thing standing between Hillary and the presidency, with such masterful Russian memes as this. Yeah, this was the only noteworthy thing to come out of those 2% Russian tweets. I'm sure that swung a lot of votes, eh? Edgit attributes Twitter's reasoning for hiding the Podesta-related tweets from Twitter users simply by reference to the source of their publication, WikiLeaks. The core of the hashtag was propagated by WikiLeaks, whose account sent out a series of 118 original tweets, containing variants on the hashtag Podesta emails, referencing the daily installments of the emails released on the WikiLeaks website. Boy, Jack just couldn't stand that the whistleblowers he and his SJW ilk supported a decade earlier had also discovered that his political pet projects were just as corrupt as the people he hated. I want this all to really sink in, my friends. WikiLeaks spearheaded the charge of revealing the Republican establishment under George W. Bush to be entirely corrupt, and the social justice mob that would later come to control today's social media empires were at the time WikiLeaks' most ardent supporters. But now that WikiLeaks has revealed the Democratic establishment to be equally corrupt, they have become the basis for a mass censorship and deplatforming program by the social media barons that used to support them. And because Jack certainly doesn't want 2016 to happen again, he's doing his part in making conservative and centrist voices on Twitter wink out of existence. The alternative social media site, Gab, released a short video showing exactly how Twitter is directly interfering in the upcoming 2018 midterm elections.
Twitter is actively interfering in the US midterm elections. And here's how, and here's why. Dr. Kenneth Wright is running for Congress in California against Ted Lieu. California just so happens to be where Twitter Inc. is based. If we look at the Shadowban checker at shadowban.eu, we can run a check on Dr. Kenneth Wright's account. And as you can see here, he has a quality filter shadowban. What this means is that the quality filter is applied to his account. He will not show up, his tweets will not show up in search results. Folks may not get notifications from him. He is effectively put in a box with his current followers. Then we go to his opponent, Ted Lieu's account. And as you can see, he has no quality filter shadowban, which means that he has free reign across the website and will show up in trends. He will show up in search results. Folks will be able to find him much easier. This is direct interference into the 2018 midterm elections. And there's not just one case of this. This is clearly targeting Republican candidates. Now, this user brought up a very interesting point that I'd like to highlight. If Twitter is giving Ted Lieu free advertisements for his profile, free Twitter ads, that would undoubtedly be considered an in-kind monetary donation from Twitter Inc., the corporation, to that candidate. However, is the opposite also true? If Twitter Inc. is intentionally suppressing opponents to candidates that they support, does that also count as an in-kind donation? There is something going on here. The media wants to talk about Russian interference. How about we look into big tech's interference into our electoral process? So Twitter creates these algorithms to hide the tweets of users who are blocked by many other users, among other signals. Prominent left-wing activists then create shared block lists that they add anyone who follows too many of the wrong people to. And these block lists contain hundreds of thousands of pro-Trump, conservative, right-leaning accounts. Fake news allies in the media because they're best friends with Twitter. The journalists just love Twitter. It's their little playground where they think that they can control the narrative. So what they do is they promote the use of these shared block lists by misrepresenting these people, calling them Nazis, harassers, trolls. And of course, they jump to the defense of Twitter and say, oh no, they're just trying to get rid of all the bad actors, all the toxic people. with toxic ideas. They're free to do so. They're not shadow banning. So the native user who subscribes to these block lists based on this false representation made by activists and the media, they add these block lists, and then these accounts become flagged and become shadow banned. Large numbers of right-leaning users have their tweets hidden because they are blocked by users who subscribe to these massive block lists. Twitter responds, claiming, we don't have responsibility, it's our algorithm. This algorithm is meant to clean up the platform and help us focus on, quote, conversational health. It just starts all over again. All they do is blame the algorithm, but what they don't tell you is that the algorithm has bias. The algorithm was written by human beings. Those human beings who work at Twitter Inc. have a very far left bias. Everybody knows this. Twitter's CEO admits this. Engineers have been caught on camera by James O'Keefe admitting that they shadow ban, quote, rednecks. This is insanity. This is interfering in the electoral process, and they're using this sophistry that I just explained, along with sophistry from the media, to help them lie about it and get away with it.
And just recently, Jack stated on the Washington Post that he's rethinking the core parts of Twitter so it doesn't enable the spread of hate speech, harassment, and false news. And though the article does not go into specific detail, the general gist of it sounds a lot like Sarah Jeong's suggestion of treating harassment like spam by using automated filters to stop it from even being seen on the platform, which, again, sounds a lot like shadow banning. Twitter may not have been on the bandwagon to boot Alex Jones off of its platform, at least not right away, but don't think that they're somehow better. Twitter is a nightmare of social justice authoritarianism.
More and more people have fear of companies like ours, and the perceived power that companies like ours have over how they live and even think every single day, and that is not right and it is not fair.
I did a video on James Damore's Google memo back when that hit, and knowledge of that event is necessary to understand the depths that Google and YouTube are willing to sink to control people. I recommend you go watch it if you haven't already. Since I published that video, James Damore filed a complaint with the National Labor Relations Board. The board found the firing to be legal, but not before he withdrew his complaint, and instead filed a class action lawsuit against Google, claiming that Google discriminates against conservatives, white people, and men. It hasn't gone much farther beyond that though, so let's just keep our ear to the ground on this one for now. But as Bonnie Christian writes on Wired, Google's real legal problem has nothing to do with James Damore. Claims of political discrimination are the least of Google's worries. Google is facing a decidedly bigger problem than Damore, namely, claims that it's discriminated against women on a massive scale. More than 60 current and former Google employees are considering launching a class action lawsuit alleging sexism and pay disparities against women. The case would be a blow to Google's ongoing denial that it systemically underpays women. The allegations began in 2015 after a routine audit by the DOL. At the time, employment data, including job title, gender, race, salary, bonuses, and incentives for around 21,000 workers at its headquarters in Mountain View, California, were turned over, providing a snapshot of that year. The agency found systemic compensation disparities against women pretty much across the entire workforce. But to prove that a pay gap indicates discrimination and unlawful practices, the agency has been asking for more data, including salary histories for 25,000 employees dating back to when they first joined Google. So let me get this straight. Google goes to its employees and asks, how do we get more women in tech? James Damore, due to his background as an engineer, assumes Google wants to hear about real, tangible things it can do in order to tackle the problem, rather than what Google really wanted, which was an ideological answer echoing back at them across the chamber. So Damore writes a memo describing the differences between men and women, and how Google, with an understanding of those differences, can tailor jobs to women in order to attract them and keep them on. And because Damore began with the idea that men and women are different, he's labeled a bigot and fired. Meanwhile, Google is actually discriminating against women. Google must be run by dumb motherfuckers because they fired the guy that could have pulled them out of the legal hole they're currently in. If they had just, for once in their fucking lives, shut their mouth, not taken an idiotic ideological stance, and looked at the issue pragmatically. Oh, and because this whole shit show is immensely embarrassing to Google, Google's requested, and the court has complied, the case files be sealed from all public viewing. Well, except for me, I guess. See, I might forget to archive Twitter links once in a while, but when I see documents like this, I get a fucking hard copy. Here's an email entered into the court documents from an Alex Hidalgo with the subject line, "You are a terrible person." Feel free to pass this on to HR. Keep them in the loop for all I care. May as well do it early. You're a misogynist and a terrible human. I will keep hounding you until one of us is fired. Fuck you. Well, Alex, I have a feeling it's probably going to be both of you eventually. Here's another ideologue, an Alan Altman. One good thing that could come out of the trash fire is that several of the people who agree with the document have actively stated their support. Pretty much all of these Googlers are employed at will. If Google management cares enough about diversity and inclusion, they should, and I urge them to, send a clear message by not only terminating Mr. Damore, but also severely disciplining or terminating those who have expressed support. This will send a message that we have zero tolerance for intolerance. I would also like to take this opportunity to say if Mr. Damore is not terminated by the end of the month, I plan to turn in my 2 weeks' notice. There's a lot to say here, but I think what sticks out to me the most is that SJWs routinely rail against the exploitative nature of at-will employment, but I have a feeling that they'll never actually do anything to abolish the practice as long as they're the ones wielding the power. Wu told Damore he was being terminated for perpetuating gender stereotypes. Rao then stated this was Google's final decision. When Damore attempted to explain why his termination was unlawful, Rao stated there would be no discussion. Should have read the contract, James. Perpetuating gender stereotypes was right there in the fine print as a fireable offense. Between not consuming the required amount of Soylent per week and preventing your spouse or significant other from reporting to Google CEO and Anthony Birch lookalike Sundar Pichai's office within 6 weeks of hiring. Not only did Google summarily terminate Damore for his political views relating to workplace issues, but it also rewarded Google employees who disagreed with and disparaged Damore. The Google Recognition team allowed employees to give fellow employees peer bonuses for arguing against Damore's political viewpoints. Peer bonuses were typically reserved for outstanding work performance or for going above and beyond an employee's job duties. In but one example of Google rewarding Damore's critics financially, an employee gave a peer bonus to another employee, stating that the bonus was for speaking up for googly values and promoting diversity and inclusion in the wretched hive of scum and villainy that is Damore's memo. The Google Recognition team reviewed this justification, considered it appropriate, and allowed the bonus to proceed. Every time Google takes a government grant, this is where your tax dollars go, guys. Google employees give each other slaps in the back and pat each other's paychecks for virtue signaling. And here's a Mr. Colm Buckley. There are certain alternative views, including different political views, which I do not want people to feel safe to share here. Yes, this is silencing. I intend to silence these views. They are violently offensive. James Damore's point of view, violently offensive. Colm Buckley's desire to make people feel unsafe? Completely fine. And Google thought so too, because upon review, they determined that no disciplinary action would be taken for Buckley's threats. Here's Alan Altman again, this time with a list of things he wants to see Google higher-ups either do themselves or authorize. The list includes blacklist alt-right, aka white supremacist sites from the Google ad network. Breitbart, which by the way is not white supremacist, it's just conservative, should never see Google ads. Take down all, quote, alt-right videos from YouTube. And I guarantee you his definition would include not only alt-right videos, but political centrist videos, capitalist videos, gun-centric videos, classical liberal videos, any videos criticizing social justice, and probably the old Game Grumps episodes where they said nigger.
I'm still trying to think of the most racist thing I've ever done. There's got to be something. Okay.
You dropped someone off who was black, you had to say like nigger like 30 times to get out of your system.
Remove neo-Nazi sites such as the Daily Stormer from the Google search index. This one's not really necessary anymore, is it? Relocate Google I/O 2017 outside the US. I think Altman knows that sooner or later America's going to stop tolerating Google's shit, and this is the first step in them getting around that. Delete Donald Trump's and his administration's and his aides' Gmail accounts for abuse. Holy fuck, dude, this isn't illegal, but do you actually expect it to fly? Brick Donald Trump's Android phone, Okay, this is actually illegal. Here's how you know Alan Altman is a crying man-child with no idea of how power politics works. Right now, Google is able to continue its widespread abuse of the internet, primarily because the lazy eye of the government has not yet trained itself on them. If Trump lost his phone, his favorite toy, if he and his staff lost all their Gmail accounts, how long do you think that eye would remain off of you? How long until Trump rolls in and completely buttfucks Google into compliance? You know what? Maybe you should go ahead with this list after all. I mean, it seems like the eye is already focusing on you because Trump tweeted on August 18th, "Social media is totally discriminating against Republican and conservative voices. Speaking loudly and clearly for the Trump administration, we won't let that happen. Censorship is a very dangerous thing. I don't ask that fake news be removed. I get used to it and watch with a grain of salt, or don't watch at all. Let everybody participate, good and bad, and we will all just have to figure it out." Not only is Trump right about all this, people like Alan Altman and others blatantly admit behind the scenes that this type of censorship is exactly what they want to do. I could keep going, but there are 201 pages to this court document, and I simply don't have the time in this video to go over every single piece of retardation. If you guys want a separate video on this topic, let me know, I'll be happy to make one. But let's jump ahead to the conclusion. Google is fucked. It's completely infested with social justice warriors that do not give a shit about free expression and are silently doing everything they can to control the internet, push their narrative, and silence dissenters. And conservative commentators like Yes Margaret have noticed this on the ground, with each new algorithm tweak serving to bury conservative voices one shovelful at a time. Oh, Mark Zuckerberg. I'm not sure which of these tech giants is the most oppressive of the bunch, but I know that of all of them, Facebook is the most public with its authoritarianism. And I'm not actually sure if that's intentional. I honestly think the Zuck is just incompetent. Let's start with the Vox article. Mark Zuckerberg has been apologizing for reckless privacy violations since he was a freshman. Enough is enough. Back in October of 2003, then college freshman Mark Zuckerberg exploited lax computer security at Harvard's online dorm directories to assemble a vast collection of photos of students' faces, which were used as raw material for a web project he called FaceMash. The project, intended as more of an inside joke than a wide-release software product, spread virally throughout the student community, where it quickly prompted outrage and was taken down. On November 3rd, 2003, Zuckerberg got notice that he would have to appear before a disciplinary panel, and on November 19th, he was cleared to continue attending school after apologizing and promising essentially not to do it again. Well, did the Zuck learn from his mistakes? It seems like, in fact, he did not. 2 years after promising the FTC that Facebook would not be using the user database of newly acquired WhatsApp for targeted advertisements, Facebook went ahead and did just that anyway. On March 31st, 2018, Facebook announced that it would begin to fact-check political content for accuracy, stating directly that the initiative was to review ongoing election efforts. Here's a quote from Facebook's VP of Product Management on the topic. "By now, everyone knows the story. During the 2016 US election, foreign actors tried to undermine the integrity of the electoral process. Their attack included taking advantage of open online platforms such as Facebook to divide Americans and to spread fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Now, none of us can turn back the clock, but we are all responsible for making sure the same kind of attack on our democracy does not happen again, and we are taking our role in that effort very, very seriously." Just like Twitter and Google, they will decide what is acceptable to say, think, and feel, not the body politic. They will determine what truth is, they will determine what context is, and your objections, disapprovals, or criticisms will be considered hate speech. And Zuck himself would even comment on some of these actions. For example, stating that the company was taking an important step to protect the integrity of elections around the world by taking down more than 270 pages and accounts operated by a Russian organization called the Internet Research Agency. Is it possible that, unlike the walloping 2% on Twitter, the majority of these were actually Russian plants? Maybe. But I think it's more likely that most of these pages were legitimate opposition, and Facebook is using the Russians as a scapegoat to silence speech they disagree with. Facebook has also attempted to add warning labels to news site links that it disapproves of, though as of April 4th, 2018, Breitbart claimed it was still appearing on their articles posted to the platform. Time magazine wrote on December 22nd, 2017, that Facebook was discontinuing the practice because it was backfiring, causing more people to read and distribute disputed articles, not less. YouTube actually took cues from Facebook on this one, and for a short time would display hilariously biased warnings on videos, calling outlets like the BBC, the CBC, and others publicly funded broadcasters, while labeling Russia Today as state propaganda, when in reality they were both the same damn thing. Government-owned news agencies. But this is why I think Zuckerberg is a fucking alien, despite the obvious biological cues. He doesn't understand that human beings have a thirst, a passion for new information. Even if it's wrong, even if it's false, even if it's morally objectionable, we want to read it and judge it for ourselves. We do not want a nanny state in Facebook or anyone else. And when the Facebook censors shriek, "Don't read this," we want to read it more, if only to see what the fuss is about. I mean, I had never even heard of PragerU before, but it turns out that their Facebook page was censored. Their past 9 videos reached exactly 0 of their 3 million followers, and Facebook deleted at least 2 videos in their backlog for hate speech. The Streisand effect kicked in, and reports of PragerU's censoring went viral. And now, I know about PragerU. I probably would have never stumbled upon them myself, but now their content is in my backlog. And then there's Cambridge Analytica. In a now deleted article on the ABC News website, it's reported that the Facebook information of up to 87 million people, mostly in the US, may have been improperly shared with Cambridge Analytica, a consulting firm that collects and brokers data for election and advertisement purposes. The data was collected because an app, This Is Your Digital Life, was allowed by Facebook not only to collect data from its users for use in the app, but also from the entirety of the user's extended friend group, none of whom had the opportunity to consent. The app's creator later sold all of its collected data to Cambridge Analytica. This is kind of like the whole Candid thing, where a handful of YouTubers vouched for Candid, and then Google later bought Candid and exploited all of its collected data, though this was obviously on a much bigger scale. Cambridge Analytica would go on to use its inappropriately harvested data in service of the campaigns of Ted Cruz, Donald Trump, and the Brexit campaign Leave.eu. This came to light because a Canadian whistleblower, Christopher Wylie, leaked the information to the mainstream media. Facebook retaliated against Wylie by banning him from their platform, and his previously sent messages and posts appeared to other users of the service as blocked due to spam or abuse. Despite how you feel about President Trump, I'm neutral myself, we all have to admit that Cambridge Analytica's use of Facebook user data in service of his presidential campaign was grossly unethical, and that Facebook themselves were incompetent in preventing its leak. But shady dealings involving Facebook are a bipartisan effort. Gary Briggs, a top executive at Facebook, stepped down from his post at the start of 2018 in order to assist the Democratic Party in their midterm election efforts, as well as the 2020 presidential election campaign. Maybe this is why Facebook decided to ramp up censorship of conservative voices on its platform as the elections draw close. So, as stated in the Vox article from earlier, Zuck was dragged in front of Congress to explain himself, just like how he was dragged in front of a Harvard Board of Inquiry all those years ago. And while some of the congressional hearings minutes were made private, journalists did live tweet what they were hearing during the event. Alan Rappaport stated that Zuckerberg is not able to give a straight answer about whether Facebook tracks browsing activity after users log off. And Jeffrey Miller stated that Zuckerberg testified he's optimistic that in 5 to 10 years, Facebook will have AI tools to automatically censor hate speech. But he couldn't define hate speech beyond whatever makes some people feel unsafe. These accounts lead me to believe that Mark Zuckerberg did not learn from his time in front of Harvard's Board of Inquiry. He just doesn't care about the ethics or the consequences of his actions. Zuckerberg's moral system is centered around connecting people being not only an implicit good, but as the fundamental good above all other goods. As hard as it is to believe that, it's the truth. In 2016, an internal Facebook memo titled The Ugly was circulated among the management. Let's read it. We connect people. That can be good if they make it positive. Maybe someone finds love. Maybe it even saves the life of someone on the brink of suicide. So we connect more people. That can be bad if they make it negative. Maybe it costs a life by exposing someone to bullies. Maybe someone dies in a terrorist attack coordinated on our tools. And we still connect people. The ugly truth is that we believe in connecting people so deeply that anything that allows us to connect more people more often is de facto good. It is perhaps the only area where the metrics do tell the true story as far as we are concerned. This isn't something that we're doing for ourselves, or for our stock price. It is literally just what we do. We connect people, period. That's why all the work we do in growth is justified. all the questionable contact importing practices, all of the subtle language that helps people stay searchable by friends, all of the work we do to bring more communication in, the work we will likely have to do in China someday, all of it. The natural state of the world is not connected. It is not unified. It is fragmented by borders, languages, and increasingly by different products. The best products don't win. The ones everyone use win. I know a lot of people don't want to hear this. Most of us have the luxury of working in the warm glow of building products that consumers love. But make no mistake, growth tactics are how we got here. If you join the company because it is doing great work, that's why we get to do that great work. We do have great products, but we still wouldn't be half our size without pushing the envelope on growth. Nothing makes Facebook as valuable as having your friends on it, and no product decisions have gotten as many friends on as the ones made in growth. Not photo tagging, not newsfeed, not Messenger, nothing. In almost all of our work, we have to answer hard questions about what we believe. We have to justify the metrics and make sure they aren't losing out on a bigger picture. But connecting people, that's our imperative, because that's what we do. We connect people. It's appropriate this memo is called The Ugly, because it's the bold-faced truth. Privacy doesn't matter to Facebook. Ethics and morality don't matter to Facebook. Borders, sovereignty, capitalism, freedom, speech, or choice certainly don't matter to Facebook. And as stated directly in the memo, people getting killed does not matter to Facebook. This is like that bit from Evangelion where they mush together the entirety of humanity into one giant unified uniform mass. Or like the Borg from Star Trek wanting to assimilate all life in the galaxy. I honestly hate to co-opt their phrase, but in this specific instance, our diversity is actually our strength. Diversity comes from things like differences in skin color and gender, but also, and more importantly, differences of opinion, differences in outcome, differences in borders and cultures and philosophies and politics. And while SJWs just love to talk about how diversity is strength, they only take that point of view skin deep. That's why they want to abolish borders, despite the real diversity that borders create. That's why Facebook wants to connect people at any cost, even at the expense of life itself. That's why you get articles stating nonsense like diversity of thought is white supremacy. So when Facebook stock tanks to the tune of the biggest drop in history, when Zuckerberg is hauled off in front of the committees of multiple governments, looking like a bug-eyed alien boy, when former Facebook employees come out and speak against the company or Zuckerberg personally, like the pollster hired to monitor approval ratings that quit after 6 months due to the intensity of the echo chamber he found in there, when Facebook requires page owners to provide additional personal details once their page reaches a popularity threshold, in order to make the service a more, quote, trustworthy place. When Facebook deletes what it labels as abusive, or spam, or hate speech, or fake news in Alex Jones's case, in order to make room for ridiculous posts like this, claiming that white people are wearing silicone masks of black faces in order to drive up black-on-black shooting rates in Chicago. I can only laugh. Facebook needs to burn in a tire fire. There are other footnotes to go over too, like how PayPal has begun blocking the payments of people who commission pornographic content and use their service to pay for it, or how MasterCard has forced Patreon to kick Jihad Watch off their service due to Jihad Watch's speaking out against Islam. It wasn't even Patreon that did it, it was MasterCard. So what's next? Banks won't let you take out a loan or open an account if they dislike your politics? Grocery stores won't let you buy food without linking up your Twitter account to the cash register for a scan? Clothing stores will bar your entry unless your Facebook profile is up to snuff? For all of the criticisms I have thrown at the far right in the past 20 years, both online and off, they have, to my knowledge, never tried to exclude their political opponents from lawful capitalist transactions based on their political affiliation. And yet that's what the left is trying to do right now. It really seems like social justice educated mindworms have wriggled their way into positions of power all across society, and have begun using their influence to attack conservatives and centrists by any means at their disposal. And it has to stop. And you know what? The shadier governments of the world, including our own, make no mistake, will use this as an excuse to tighten their own grip on these sections of the economy as well. Like the Cloud Act becoming law, granting the government easier access to your private emails, documents, and other internet communications. This is what SJW over control of the internet is causing. It's forcing the government's hand. Of course, there's still some hope. Alternate platforms exist, like Minds, Gab, and BitChute. And I've got channels up on all of them, so hey, please go subscribe. And when Maker Support and Hatreon reopen applications, I'll be on there too as an alternative to Patreon. But also, Paul Nealon, a known white supremacist and contender for Congress in the upcoming midterms, has made proposed shall not censor legislation a cornerstone of his platform. The legislation aims to prohibit the censorship of lawful speech on major social media platforms. We are not extensively regulating or trust busting, Nealon explains, because people generally like how these platforms perform in terms of functionality. This law will not interfere with features or functionality, so market forces will remain in play. The problem is their censorship of lawful speech. Hypocritically, the same companies that support net neutrality also want to censor your speech. We say no. I can't believe things have gotten so bad, so fucking bad on the left, that in order to advocate for free speech, I have to support a fucking white supremacist. But here we are. It's the future you fucking chose, progressives. In acting so arrogantly, so tyrannically, you made yourselves the greater evil between you and the actual racists. And yes, the immediate frontline problem really is social justice, not the Nazis or the white supremacists. If they ever actually become relevant again, I'm going to be right there in opposition to them. But they have no institutional power anymore. To contrast, social justice warriors are extremely relevant right now and have a lot of institutional power. SJWs are completely content to sit back and have the largest, most powerful, multi-billion-dollar social media companies censor people en masse because they're privately owned companies, so the First Amendment doesn't apply. Oh, but when a privately owned bakery wants to refuse a gay couple's patronage, yeah, the government should force them to do it, fuck the Constitution. SJWs are completely content to let social media companies destroy independent journalism entirely, with Facebook executive Campbell Brown quoted as warning news outlets to cooperate or die in hospice as Facebook cuts them off. Meanwhile, rallying against what they characterize as President Trump attacking the media as fake news, calling it anti-democratic and fascist. SJWs are completely content to allow social media companies to hide behind Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, giving them the privilege of being considered a forum for public discourse, freeing them from being legally liable for information published by their users, while simultaneously denying those users the First Amendment rights that a forum for public discourse under Section 230 requires to function. I mean, if the First Amendment doesn't apply to social media companies, why does the Third Amendment? Oh, I know the Third Amendment prevents the quartering of soldiers on your private property, but these are Mark Zuckerberg's privately owned Facebook militia, not government troops. So it's not actually violating the Constitution, right? See how stupid this sounds? Why is it any different for the First Amendment? Section 230 is important. Can you imagine if the government held the phone company liable because criminals planned crimes over the phone? But just as Section 230 removes responsibility, it also removes the power to police. The social media companies are enjoying not having any real responsibility, but they've decided to police anyway, based not on the law, but on their own subjective morality. And hey, if you want to follow Alex Jones down the conspiracy rabbit hole, the Prince of Darkness himself, George Soros, has begun buying shares in social media companies. Jesus, just look at that guy. He looks like the Emperor. My final point is this. This whole situation didn't start with Alex Jones, and it's certainly not going to end with him. It started a long, long time ago, and it either ends with rich San Francisco hipsters deciding what the rest of the world gets to think, say, and feel, or with antitrust legislation aimed to promote freedom of speech online, regardless of the private ownership of these companies. They'll claim they're preventing far-right violence, but we all know that's BS. Every group's got a shooter now. Not just the incels and the Islamists. There's been a trans shooter, there was the gay shooter at Pulse, there was the YouTube shooter that decided to attack YouTube's headquarters because her videos got demonetized, for fuck's sake. Violent attacks are not the sole domain of the far right. They will claim they're preventing abuse and harassment and hate speech, but they will never be able to define to you exactly what those things are. And they will wield that power to censor people on their whims. And they will claim that just using the block button will not be acceptable, because of Sarah Jeong's work on conflating harassment with spam. We have spam filters, so why don't we start filtering speech too? I say no. We must break the social media companies if public discourse is to survive in the 21st century. Like I brought up in both my Sarah Jeong video and in my net neutrality video, Marsh v. Alabama was rejected in the Cybersecurity v. America Online case because America Online was considered a closed service, not open to public use. Can we truly say the same for Twitter and Facebook? I don't think we can. The time for a digital Bill of Rights is now. It's been a long while since Silicon Valley's done something tangible to actually improve the internet. They've centralized it against the spirit of an open and free internet. They've regulated it, while decrying government and ISP regulation of it. They've censored it under the guise of curation. And now they're politically cleansing it, using the excuses of combating hate speech and preventing electoral interference. They've banned people who oppose them in this as abusers or spammers, using Sarah Jeong's theory of the Internet of Garbage as a philosophical and technological framework. And they've created a rod for their own backs, because their self-appointed job of being the world's moral busybodies will never ever be complete. The social media barons and their social justice acolytes have made the human capacity for curiosity and learning and knowledge its enemy, and that is a war they will never win.
You know, we've seen all these issues on the service. We've seen abuse, we've seen trolling, we've seen harassment, we've seen misinformation, and it came to a point where we felt we were playing whack-a-mole. We were just, you know, and also just addressing the surface level behaviors and symptoms rather than looking deeper at the second order drivers.